Evening all. Well, I hope you've had as good a Christmas and New Year's as you could have had under the circumstances. And I'm back with a few announcements. What's happening with the Rubber Channel? Because I haven't done a lot recently. In fact, the second half of 2012, my output has decreased. Number of reasons for this. One, with the lockdowns, I have less time, ironically, to produce material. Before, my wife would go out to the City of London where she works. My children were at school. For a lot of time, there was the four of us at home, which is great for the family life. The four of us together, we have a lot of fun. It's great being together as a family. But the flip side of that is that I don't have as much time to research, film, and edit videos as I did beforehand. The second announcement I want to make is that the Weekly Biscuit is being retired. This is mainly because I think the news cycle goes so quickly, and I think there are other channels doing a kind of weekly roundup. And I think I've gone as far with the formula as I can. I'm not the first person to have done this. Dave Cullen found out that you can only do this for a while. Sargon found out you could only do this for a while before you want to stretch your legs a bit and try something else. And with the Weekly Biscuit, I got over 50 episodes of that. And it really is time, I think, to move on from that because I've got other ideas, other things I want to pursue. And with my time being critical at the moment, I can't really devote it to a kind of weekly roundup of the news kind of format. But I have something which I'm really excited about that I want to announce to you, something quite special. So I'm launching a couple of campaigns this year, and one is called Get Real, and the other one is called Think Things Through. They're both related, they both connect to each other, but they are separate in concept. So let's talk about Get Real. What does that mean? Well, we've seen a lot of dishonesty in 2020, vast majority of it coming from the left, progressive left. A little bit has also come from the online right. I've not seen so much dishonesty, misrepresentation, and gaslighting than I have in 2020. And from top to bottom, from kind of like shake and bake Twitter mouthpieces, right up to major media, mainstream media, and certain governments. And Get Real is an attempt to address things, address issues, and address yourself as a person and other people in the most honest, frank, and truthful way possible. I've been rereading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life and got back to rule number 5, tell the truth or at least don't lie. So how does this work in practice? What does Get Real mean? Well, first of all, it starts with yourself. Now, I'm somebody, if you've followed me on Twitter, if you know me for a little bit, I really can't stand lying and misrepresentation and gaslighting. I absolutely can't stand it. And that goes back to some things in childhood, which I might share with you one day. But there's when I see it happening, and particularly if it's personal, if it's something I'm close to and I'm witnessing, and I know the facts to be otherwise, I do get angry and I do speak out. So I am, I feel very passionate about trying to be honest, but both with yourself first. And what that means is that Get Real means looking at yourself and also your failures and your strengths and what you can realistically do. It's about being realistic, truthfulness and realism. And in that case, you've got to take stock of yourself. You've got to say, this is what I can do. And always, when you go in to argue or debate or to put your point across or to get active in things, you've got to have the facts on your side. We've seen examples where, and I've experienced this myself, I've gone in, I've said something, I haven't done the fact checking, and I get hauled up. And I think that's when you look foolish. You've got to back away. If you're kind of honest about your positions and you go away and you research and you look at an issue and you realize that there are flaws in any point of view. And you've got to address those flaws. You've got to be honest with it. You've got to get real. But you also challenge others to get real as well. And this is something I recommend. When you see the lying, when you see the gaslighting, you've got to call it out wherever you can. And also, when you do it, make sure you've done a bit of research first so you can counter with a factual point and put it back on them. And I've noticed that if you put something that has actual factual point behind it, quite often the progressive activists, or even those few on the right who do this kind of dishonest tactic, you can get them to retreat. You can get them to backpedal, and you've claimed the ground. And also, you've got to remember that when you are debating, you're not just debating one other person, because you're not in a closed loop. There are lots of people looking on, lots of people witnessing, and really you're trying to capture the attention of those people looking on. This is one thing we did back in the days when we would debunk. I was with a team debunking conspiracy theories, is that somebody would say, well, why are you arguing with them? You're never going to convince them. They go, no, I'm not in it to convince them. I'm in it to convince all the people that are watching this, looking on. That's who you're focusing on. So Get Real is about personal honesty and being truthful in what you say and trying to get your facts as correct as possible. And also calling out the lies and dishonesty and misrepresentations. And misrepresentations is another thing. It's one thing about 2020 that I noticed was it was an attempt by people to slap labels on people they disagree with their opponents. And the left do it all the time. They go, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're some kind of phobic, right? And those on the right would take words and misrepresent what you're saying and then go, you cuck, you backslider, you traitor, you net negative, right? You containment, boomer, cope. Okay, so it cut both ways. The thing about Get Real is about being honest. So I had to block three people that I knew that were in my Twitter circle. I had to block them because they misrepresented something that I said. And when they were confronted with what I actually said, my word for word, what I said, they would double down. Well, if somebody's doubling down, if they're confronted with the facts and they refuse to back down and they double down, they're dishonest. If they're dishonest, you cut them out, you call them out, and you chuck them away. Get Real is about getting rid of the dishonest hangers-on in your circle as well. And that can be ruthless. You go, oh no, I'm going to take a hit in my follower account. Doesn't matter. You don't need those people. You don't need dishonest charlatans misrepresenting you. They're your friend one day and they stab you in the back the next. You don't need those people. Cut them out. You have to get real. You want to be surrounded. This is another Jordan Peterson rule number 3, which is make friends with people who want the best for you. And that is so true. I mean, I spent New Year's Eve with people I've known for 30 or more years. But I know that I can be in a place of honesty and reality with them. Likewise with my family. I think it's really important that you put honesty on the top. But I hear some people say, but if we're honest, we lose. We've got to adapt the tactics of the left. Okay, that brings me to my second point, which is think things through. Right, think things through is my other part of my campaign for 2021. And this stems from my background and training in the film industry, which is you get a hold of a script. I was hired, most jobs I had was as an assistant director or somewhere on the production team. And also when I wrote and directed stuff myself. So you have this lovely script, and the script says you're going to do this and you're going to go to these places, and this is the action. And you have to break that script down into how you're going to achieve that. So when they say, an explosion happens, right, now we've got to get an armourer in. We've got to get explosives. We've got to get pyrotechnics people in. Okay, we've got to get the health and safety on that. We have to do a risk assessment. Okay, that's what you do. When you have these things, you have to think things through. There's a lot of directors come out of film schools, or they don't even go to film schools. They've just raised a bunch of money. They've got the money to hire a camera and a crew, and they just think they can strap it on and go. Robert Rodriguez did it on El Mariachi, we can just wing it. You can wing it, but it's better to think things through, because if something goes wrong, Rodriguez got lucky on El Mariachi as well, and I think he put a lot more planning and thinking than the legend has it about the making of that film. Yes, it was very low budget. Some things had to be improvised, some things had to be adapted. But when he said, "Okay, we are going to do this," you have to look at the paper and say, "Okay, how are we going to turn this into reality?" And it's the same with political activism. When the easiest thing to do is sit back on social media and let all the bile and all your visceral opinions just spew out, and then do nothing about it, and then complain that others aren't doing anything about it. Okay, but every time you make one of these visceral calls, have you thought things through? What are the implications? So I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to give you the answer to this or my thoughts on this in this video. I think it's a subject for another one. But you hear people on the right saying that the only future for the right is if we destroy the Conservative Party and the Republican Party in America. Okay, that's an idea. Now let's think things through. Okay, if you do that, the theory is if you get rid of these two political parties that already exist, it will create the conditions for a genuine conservative movement to arise. Well, how do you know that? How can you ensure that will happen? What happens if the destruction of these two parties takes place? Politics, like nature abhors a vacuum, something will fill it. What will that thing be? So you have to think things through. If you want your proposal to hold water, you have to think things through. You have to plan. You have to work out the contingencies. Now, I'll give you another example. So in the wake of the US presidential election, there were allegations of electoral fraud, and a lot of that seemed to hold water. But some people were going, really? I mean, isn't this where we were in 2016 with not my president, Trump, and collusion with Russia? The thing is that there was some people, myself included, I personally thought that there is something not right, that there is some basis for investigating electoral fraud. I think there have been instances. Some instances seem more credible than others. But the way my mind works is it's the contingency that I say, okay, what if taking it to court and everything, what if Biden is still inaugurated? Thinking ahead, okay, what are some strategies for dealing with a Biden administration? And people called me a cuck and a backslide and traitor and net negative and all that, because I was contemplating. You're not even allowed to contemplate. Think things through is about contemplating what are the likely outcomes of any given scenario. So you have various scenarios, and you're thinking, if it goes this way, this is how we're going to deal with it. If we go this way, if we plan for the worst. You plan for the worst. This is something, again, we did in the film industry, but if you have a look at other areas where there's risk in the military campaign planning, even on D-Day, they were planning, what if it didn't work? What if the invasion of Normandy didn't work? What was the contingency plan there? Likewise with space flight, going to the moon, getting into space. You have backups, you have procedures. If things go wrong, what's the procedure? This was no different. Think things through is about thinking of the contingencies. If things go well for you, how do you capitalize on that? If things don't go well for you, how do you bounce back? It's not about purity spirals. It's not about cucking. It's nothing about that. It is about applying your intelligence, applying your wisdom and skills in order to plan better strategies and to be honest with the limitations in your argument. And I'll give you just one more example before I sign off on this. And that is, when I was with the conspiracy theory debunking team, there was somebody threw an intellectual exercise at us, and that was, what do you think is the weakest position in your argument? If you had the trip to the going to the moon, did we go to the moon? And you have all the facts on your side. But he said, what is the thing you would think is the weakest point in your argument? What is the one that you're not 100% sure of, that you can't really back up? You had to identify what you thought was the weakest in your position. And once you identified that, you knew how to counter. If somebody came at you on that point, you had to then think about, well, how am I going to counter back on that? How am I going? It's called a good defense. I suppose it's like in boxing. What's your defense if they come at you? Right, where are you weakest? Where do you put the effort to compensate for the areas that you're lacking in? So that's what think things through is. So I hope people like this idea of getting real, being honest about yourself, being honest about your opponents, and just looking at things the way they are in all its rawness and its openness and honesty, instead of creating narratives and creating kind of rose-tinted versions of what you want. Get real. That way you can deal with issues better. Think things through, is applying your intelligence so that any idea that you come up with is properly road tested, is properly thought out, and it will give more chance of success with what you're trying to do. So I'm going to do a series of these videos where I can apply get real and think things through with various hot topic issues and wider issues at hand. I hope you like this for 2021. Until next time, I'll probably see you on somebody's live stream. Okay, take care. Bye.